Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. You saw the thumbnail, and yes, this new red line is basically Flagberg, but a little bit better. They gave him triple battle door. So first we're going to look at the red line, then the brand new cards, and then we're going to look at the brand new grade 4 Mikazuki, because it is really good. I think it definitely catches the deck standards up to modern day era. But anyways, first off we have Kasen Kanesada, the usual, if you went second, draw one starter effect. Now for the grade 1, so his gimmick is basically getting a bunch of power and having guard restrict. His old version got double battle door, but we'll talk about that more when we get to the grade 3. So we have Kasen Kanesada Sentou, so auto when wrote upon by the grade 2, you cost reveal grade 3 with Kasen Kanesada in your red deck and put a forge token into your order zone, so free forge token. Again, continue the pattern that we saw from Keichou from last week. And then auto when wrote upon by Kasen Kanesada Toku, which is again the grade 2. You choose one of your Vanguards to get plus 10 until end of turn, so you're kind of like, I guess, Leo Odium, where you're having a 20k base Van, grade 2, which makes guarding a little bit more awkward. And of course with Forge, it's very easy to put on a board, so guarding Van is very awkward. And then of course you still have the guard size, and if they flip a trigger, it'll probably be 20 or 25, whatever, depending on what you get. So pretty good ride line. Again, you know, having a lot of wrote upon effects. This deck, or this ride line, isn't exactly plussing as much as, let's say, like Keichou in the early game, or as like Mikazuki, which is still the best ride line, and actually did not get a new ride line, which is very notable to note in this live stream, but still very good nonetheless. So next up is the grade 2. So when placed by riding from the grade 1, you search your deck for up to one special investigation, Keichou Kumamoto, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, then auto when wrote upon by Kasen Kanesada, which is the grade 3, you soul charge 1, choose your Vanguards, and it gets plus 5 to end a turn. And this matters because the new Vanguard skill needs to reach higher thresholds of power. So you reach 30, 40, then 50k to get additional effects. Alright, so I'm going to go over the grade 3 before we get to the special investigation, because the grade 3 is pretty straightforward, as you'll see right here. So here is Kasen Kanesada Celebration Outfit. Of course, it also has his full name, Kuame, so you do get the ride line effect. I'm assuming just from the, basically having the same characters. So auto Vanguard Circle, once per turn, you rest any number of your rear guards, and it gets plus 5k until end of turn for each rear guard rest for this cost. So resting 5, obviously, your max rear guards, if you commit 5 cards, we'll give him plus 25, and then plus 5 from the wrote upon from the grade 2. So you're already reaching 43, which is getting 2 of the effects. And then, you get another plus 10, you'll get the full effect. So auto Vanguard Circle, when this unit attacks, perform all the following based on this unit's power. So 30,000 or greater, you draw 1. All your front row units get plus 5 until end of turn. So kind of drive plus 1, but not really because you're drawing 1, but it is an extra hand card. Then 40,000 or greater, it gets critical plus 1 until end of turn. Then 50,000 or greater until end of battle. When your opponent will call cards from hand to Guardian Circle, they must call 3 or more at the same time. So Flagberg effect. So no triple drive or drive plus 1 really does hurt, but you get draw 1, plus 5 to your rears. You are doing 5 attacks between the old rear that restands on attack, plus the new one, which will look that you get from the special investigation. And then of course, crit pressure is always good, and your van will be massive, like easy 50k plus before, attacking. So you do need to basically get 2 special investigations set up, but your ride line guarantees 1, and you do have the Avarice Wrestler clone to get the second of special investigation set up. So as soon as you get that out, you'll get the rear that'll basically tutor him and give him plus 5 for energy balancing 3. And then you also have other ways to basically restand rears and like give power. But most of the time you are reaching the 30,000, 40,000 very easily. And then of course on Persona Ride turn, this is super easy because you'll be like 23, then, plus 25, so you'll be 48, then another plus 5. You have all 3 effects. So on your first turn, it's a little bit harder to get to the 15,000, but really not that hard because really you just need another plus 10, assuming you rest 5 rears, of course. But yeah, honestly, pretty straightforward van. Swing, massive number, then you'll restand rears afterwards or reset them. So yeah, it's really annoying going first. I do think it's hilarious that this is basically just Flagberg, but essentially better. Flagberg does have the retire, to be fair, but power to front row. This is what Flagberg wishes it got. Like power to front row, crit plus 1, a lot of other stuff. To be fair, Flagberg's retire would probably still hold up well today. It's just like the support cards the deck has gotten and no new grade 3 or ride line kind of really hurts the deck. But anyways, we're not here to bash Flagberg. I do hope Flagberg gets a new form eventually. It's just like sitting there, like Eugene and Gravidia got a new form, and like poor Flagberg's just sitting there. But anyways, this van is pretty straightforward, very good. You will basically reset one rear and then restand the other one, so you'll be doing 5 attacks, and you have the set order, which will restand your front row. So 5 attack deck, giant van, crit plus 1, draw 1, really annoying guard restrict is really good. I think it definitely brings this deck up to modern status compared to what the old grade 3 was, which was just 2 guard restrict and just gaining power and like no any other additional effects, by the way. There was no draw or crit +1 to the old grade 3 version of Kasen before, so it's a pretty big upgrade to say the least. It's definitely caught up to modern times, and again, the only way really to get around this guard restrict is to like slam the 3 hand cards, or use an order card or a blitz order. Well, order card blitz order is basically the same thing, so using Elementaria or a giant blitz order like Freezing Wave. However else, you are not placing cards on the Guardian Circle because when you play blitz orders, they're going to the order zone and not to Guardian Circle. So that's your only way really to get around this really annoying guard restrict with crit pressure, which once you're at 3 or 4 is really annoying. And of course, they'll be giving power and crit to rears. As long as none of their rears getting crit, which none of them do so far, even looking at the old ones, it's pretty balanced. But yeah, that's enough talking about Kasen. Really good stuff. Gonna go over the special investigations, but overall, I think it's quite the playable unit. And I think it's a really big upgrade for those who kind of want to play more gimmicky decks, or obviously are a really big fan of this character. Alright, so next up we have Special Investigation, Keichou Kumamoto. So play this if you have a Vanguard with Kasen Kanesada, its card name, and your order zone does not have an event with a different card name from this card. So essentially you can't play events of other characters such as Keichou that we looked at last week. Then continuous, if you have a Vanguard with Kasen Kanesada and its card name, it gets all the following. So auto, when this card is put into the order zone, you search it up to 1 unit with Kokindenjunotachi, holy crap, in its card name, reveal it, put into your hand, shuffle your deck. Then if your order zone has another card with the same name as this card, if you would search with this effect, you may instead search for a card with Jizo Yukihira in its card name. So most of the time you're searching the first one because it does have the E3 draw effect that buffs Van. So most of the time you're doing that, but you could search for Jizo because when rested, it gives +5 to Vanguard for the old version. And then for the new one, it's like a 10k booster, which is really nice. And it can also intercept from the back row, so you get a little bit more defense, especially when you're resting your whole board. And of course, 10k booster is always nice. And then auto and order zone at the start of your battle phase. If your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you cost rest this card, choose one of your rear guards, and stand it. So essentially, you're resting your whole board to get +25 to Van. Then beginning of, battle phase, you're going to rest 2 at least, hopefully you'll have more by turn, 4, you'll have 3, so you get like 2 front rows and then a back row. But yeah, you restand both front rows, you'll swing with them, swing Van, restand 1 rear, then reset the other one with the next card we'll look at. So pretty good, pretty straightforward. Again, you're probably going to want to play the Averest Rester clone because of course you want consistency for this. You want this every turn. You're going to search a turn 2, but you do want to hit it on turn 3 and 4. So you are getting a restand rear every time. So you are basically resetting, well, not resetting your board, but you're resetting your board after resting everything to get the +25k to Van. So here's the better rear we're basically talking about that you can search off the special investigation. So auto and drop, when you're grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Kasen Kanesada and its card name attacks, you cost kind of +1 if you have one or more rears with the same name as card name, you shove them all into soul, call to rear guard circle, and it gets +5k to end a turn for each special investigation. Keichou Kumamoto in your order zone. So basically for every set order you had. Then auto rear guard circle when it stands by the ability for your special investigation. This is the start of battle phase effect from the order zone. You cost energy +3, draw 1. Both this unit and your Vanguard get +5k. So it'll be like a 25k poke, maybe a little bit bigger depending on, and other effects. But, not too big of a rear on its own, but mostly it's for the E3 draw 1. And then of course your Van getting another +5. So you're easily reaching, 43k. 50k. I mean, for the 43k is pretty easy if you rest 5 rears, but mostly for the 50k for that triple guard restrict effect. So, and then of course E3 to draw 1 instead of having to use any counterblast is really nice. And then you basically have another old rear that you can basically CB1 to, not CB1, Soul Blast 1 to restand with. So you'll basically reset that, and then this will reset in the other column. So you will do 5 attacks. I'm not sure if there's a way to do more. I'm pretty sure there isn't after looking at the old units. But yeah, pretty straightforward deck. You have a funny gimmick on Van. You have a giant Van that they just have to respect, and then you get to do 5 attacks, 5 pokes, and then you call it a day. And of course, that draw 1 does kind of help mitigate things from the Van skill, and the crit pressure is nice. But kind of do wish it was dry +1. But maybe Flagberg mains would look at that and get a little bit jealous. But yeah, anyways. That is pretty much it for Kanesada, and the next things to talk about is for Mikazuki, which was arguably one of the best Touken Ranbu decks before Keichou, because it had a lot of tops along with Keichou. Actually, 33 I checked on Vanguard Paradox. Alright, so here is Mikazuki Munechika Celebration outfit, and it's kind of similar to like the Minerva effect, but not really because it doesn't work in Soul. So auto, when it's placed on rearguard circle by the ability of Forge, if you have a Vanguard with Mikazuki Munechika in its card name, you may return this unit to your hand. So basically, if you call it off Forge, it just boomerangs back to your hand, which is really, really good. So you have this as your turn 4 ride, essentially. And then if it returns to your hand by this effect, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you choose up to 1 Mikazuki Munechika Celebration outfit from your hand and ride it as stand. So not only are you bouncing it back to hand, but you can superior ride it if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, because of the Forge effect, which is pretty crazy, but it is a little bit of gambling because as far as we know, Munechika doesn't have a ride line that spawns a Forge token yet. But of course, if you are playing the deck, you are going to be trying to play as many Forges as possible. Plus, you have the new Avarice Arrestor clone to search out those Forges and make it very consistent. So it's pretty hard to not find this, especially when Forge is only targeting normal units. So already amazing. And by the way, I didn't even mention, it's a grade 4 with triple drive. So it's already a big upgrade in terms of aggression for Mikazuki. Then Continuous Vanguard. If your soul has a grade 3 with Mikazuki Munechika in its card name, this unit gets all of their act, crit +1, and all of your front row units get plus 5k. Also active during your opponent's turn. And then Kairos also knows here that you can stack multiple act abilities with multiple copies, but of course your crit and front row power increase does not stack. Then Auto Vanguard Circle. This cost can be paid with discard a card with Mikazuki Munechika in its card name. Using attacks, cost, discard 2 cards from your hand, choose 2 of your front row rear guards, stand them, and it gets plus 10k until end of turn. So very, very hyper aggressive deck on top of their ride line already being really good. So while I do think it would be nice if they did get a new ride line, but maybe they did that on purpose to not give it a free Forge because the old ride line was already really good. It's like call a free rear, ride up for free. It's like already doing really, really good stuff. And the grade 3 Mikazuchi act is essentially to like call top and then stack afterwards for Soul Blast. So you can use that multiple times, kind of similar to Glory Maelstrom, where you can use the act multiple times, but you're not copying anything else, such as, the Kants or the autos of the Mikazuki Munechika that you're copying, but still very good nonetheless. The fact that you can superior ride into this, going second, is actually crazy, because you technically can reset the act because it's a new card once you copy it. Being able to go into a grade 4 going second is absolutely crazy, and the plus NK is a big upgrade because the old Mikazuchi did not do that before. So you do have ways to restand back row columns, and you do of course have the old grade 2 rear. People who played this in JP format, or when it was more relevant JP format, because by the time we got it in English, it was like very, very old. But they have a grade 2 Mikazuki that is really, really good. So it gets plus 5k if you have 3 or more damage. If you have 4 or more, you get to stack deck for free. And if you have 5 or more, you restand it. So this deck can do 7 attacks. And, that's not even counting Persona Ride power if you somehow did get that off and then hit this with Forge and then, still get that restand for that rear. So the max potential of this deck is 7 attacks. That doesn't change, but you have crit pressure now. You have 3 drives. You have better way to pay cost instead of ditching 2 cards from your hand. And you have 18k base van on your opponent's turn, so you can actually live. Plus, of course, you have all these new generics, such as like the Biscotti clones, all the Cycler clones, all the new stuff that's brought from DZ. So I think this deck will be probably the deck to look out for. If it doesn't get a new ride line, it'll still be really good, even though it doesn't just like, spawn a Forge for like absolutely free. But like for how like, badly I would say like Touken Ranbu from Set 2 aged at the time it came out to English. In JP it was fine, it was still playable, but by the time it came to English it was definitely very outdated. But that ride line still held up for Mikazuki, so it is still absolutely amazing. I think this is definitely a deck that you will have to watch out for as a JP player, because people will bring this deck and it will take names like it did before in JP. So just a very solid, straightforward upgrade of Mikazuchi that is really, really, really good. If you are going first, you'll just boomerang this back to hand and ride it turn 4. You could technically, Persona Ride, the grade 3 over the grade 3 Mikazuchi turn 4, then try and hit this off Forge, but you do have to play for a bit more RNG. And then, of course, being able to stack that act, and then between, the act of the old Mikazuchi that you're copying as well as the grade 2, you are stacking deck very easily. And of course, you have 3 drives. And, that's not even accounting for Touken Ranbu's OT high roll, which gives a rear crit +1 and the ability to drive check. So you could have your grade 2 Mikazuchi doing, drive checks twice because at 5 damage, it'll restand itself. Or you could be giving a grade 3 on rear, crit +1 and twin drive, which is crazy because it's also getting plus 10k, and you also have the other side, which could also be a Mikazuchi restanding. So you do need 2 of the Mikazuchi grade 2s for the high roll to do 7 attacks, which will probably be a little bit more rare, but of course Forge makes this a lot more consistent, even though Forge is once per turn. But yeah, I think this is like definitely the big upgrade. Keichou was really, really good. I think it's maybe not as good as Minerva. I haven't play tested it, so it's hard to say, but you are thinning deck a lot. But I do think this is definitely the bigger upgrade. Like, this deck is just doing everything good that it was doing before, and now its kill turn is just higher, 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 and now it has generics to kind of stabilize and do a little bit better. I do think in terms of defense, it's lacking a bit. Like, you don't have a really, crazy blitz order. You don't have the broken defensing roar that got limited to 1, and, the usual, like, crazy, power creep defense in standard, like defensive roar just aging like fine wine. But yeah, this just on its own, kind of rambling on, is just amazing. It does really good things. It has really great synergy with the old cards, and it just will take names. This is a deck that you need to know what it does, because it just does a lot for no reason, like crit +1, power, drive +1 because you're a grade 4 now, and you get +10, and it's a much easier ditch cost too, because before you had to ditch 2, and you really didn't have a way to play around that because you didn't have like ditch fodder to draw 1 when you pitched for Van skill. But yeah, anyways, that is enough of glazing Mikazuki. It is just that good. Alright, so next up is Iwatooshi Celebration Outfit, or Iwatooshi, and then auto Rearguard Circle at the start of your battle phase. If you grade your Vanguard with Mikazuki Munechika on his card name, you cost Soul Boss 1. Until end of turn, it gets continuous Rearguard Circle. When this unit attack, it battles your opponent's front row units, and power +5k. Keeps that until end of turn, so when it restands, it attacks your opponent's front row again. They're probably not guarding it, and then obviously, because it's a Vermilion effect, you're attacking with this first. But yeah, that's really annoying and adds to the ceiling of this deck. To be fair, if you do have this in your front row at 5 or more damage and not the grade 2 Mikazuchi, then, people who know that will kind of play around that effect, for the restand rear. So you'll only do 6 instead of 7 attacks. But, still, like, front row battle door is just always good. Soul Boss 1 is a very easy condition. And then they also got a booster that restands. We have Imanotsurugi, Iwatooshi Celebration Outfit. I believe that's like their barracks. I could be wrong on that. Auto Rearguard Circle once returned. When this unit boosts, you may soul charge 1, so just free soul. And then auto Rearguard Circle if your unit with Iwatooshi in its card name in the same column as this unit. This cost is reduced by Energy Boss 2, so it becomes free. When your Rearguard in the same column as this unit stands by the ability of your unit with Mikazuki Munechika in its card name, you cost Energy Boss 2 stand this unit. So essentially you get free soul, free restand, just really good stuff, like just more box utility stuff for the deck on top of its aggression, which is just very, very solid. Killing front row actually does still make a difference in standard, especially if you're fighting decks that, have intercepts that are more than 5k shield. Even then, taking that 10k shield from them if they have 2 grade 2s in the front row is still really annoying, unless there's like an ace unit that doesn't have shield, but, still very good nonetheless. Then you kind of have like a throwaway generic. We have Kogitsunemaru, continuous Rearguard Circle, Guardian Circle, +5/+5, power and shield for every 2 grades of your Vanguard with Mikazuchi. So it'll just be +5/+5. Also active during opponent's turn on your first grade 3 turn. And then once you're on the grade 4, it's +10/+10. So, it does get it is 15k shield, which is pretty straightforward, simple effect. But you do have other effects that just like stack deck or draw you more cards on rear. So you'll probably be playing those instead, but still not a terrible card, honestly, for a common. Alright, then next up we have Ishikirimaru Celebration Outfit form, and this card is really, really good. It's very straightforward, but very good. So continuous Rearguard Circle, Guardian Circle, and hand, because it's a grade 3. If you have a grade 2 or greater Vanguard with Mikazuki Munechika, of course you're playing the rod line, so that's the easiest thing in the world. This card gets intercept, grade -1, and shield +5, so you can play it early turn 2. It's not a 0 shield in your hand, despite it being a grade 3. Wow. Someone looked at Bastion and said, let's just give this to Mikazuchi, or Mikazuki. And then auto, when it's placed on Rearguard Circle, you cost counter +1, draw a card, then you may soul charge 1, and then Kairos notes here, even though because of the full stop, you still have to counter boss draw 1 to get that soul charge effect, but free soul, free draw, pretty good. I mean, you are burning CB, but like really Mikazuchi doesn't, it really doesn't need that CB badly, because like if you really have to going first, you'll just ditch 2 to restand your board anyways, which was also something very strong about Mikazuki before, where like if you really don't have too many resources to work with, the deck still functions very fine, especially for the Van restand skill. Not Van restand skill, rear restand skill that the Van has. Then auto Rearguard Circle once per turn. When it attacks, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Mikazuchi Munechika on his card name, it gets +5 canes on a turn. Then if you have a grade 4 greater, it gets +10 instead of +5. So easy power, easy early game card. I cannot emphasize how good this card is. I haven't playtested the deck. It'll probably go in CFA soon, but I think it's just a very straightforward good card. Early game shield, good attacker late game, gets you draw, gets you soul early, and you're not too afraid really of being like CB denied in this deck. And of course you want damage for your really strong rears late game and where you will just explode your opponent. So again, this card's amazing. Thanks to the skill, you can play a turn 2 and kind of like aggro rush down your opponent. Of course, it'll be very easy to tri-lane. Getting this off Forge, it will always be a plus because you'll just burn CB, draw 1, get free soul. So 2 resources you really, really need. Like I guess kind of burning the counterboss kind of sucks because you do want to save that for the high roll of your, when you're on the grade 4, you can double Mikazuki rears, for that 7 attacks. But still, nonetheless, this card reads very simple. But the fact that your Forge can find this and that it's easy draw and good early game is really, really good. And of course, Forge will also solidify your early game unless Mikazuchi doesn't get a free Forge in Ride line, which is likely the case because we didn't see it in this live stream, but, you know, we'll still wait and see. Could still get it, but likely it doesn't. But, you know, we'll still disclaim that we're still waiting for that. Alright, so that pretty much does it for Touken Ranbu. I think I glazed Mikazuki a little bit too much, but I do think it's pretty good. Like, that card has a lot of text, and it does a lot. We also got, you know, Touken Ranbu rare reveals, the SPs, or the, you know, SPs of the celebration outfits, and we also got a random PR from the Miss Downer manga, you know, that it's basically a Valifer clone. So, you know, I don't know if we'll get this in English. I think it is part of the Koroko magazine because I see that in the characters on the right. But, you know, free Valifer reprint would be really nice in English, you know, once we get, you know, Youthquake cards and everything else. But yeah, you know, really cool to see that at least Japan is getting really cool promos. You know, I don't want to get started on the discussion of what is happening now since, you know, the summer presentation, but I do hope we get like the promos that English is looking for very soon, especially for Leo Nebula Knight specifically. That Nebula Knight order is like broken, and of course Youthquake and the other stuff we're catching up on because we basically had to wait a year for Blaster Blade TV, and then basically had no news on that until we saw, like, you know, got confirmed, quote unquote, that we were getting the same listings of Rees in the English. But yeah, that pretty much does it for Touken Ranbu. I think this week was actually more exciting than last, just because we got Mikazuchi, or I keep saying his name wrong, but, you know, Mikazuki, because he was the best, arguably, you know, most high roll aggressive Touken Ranbu deck that had the most results besides Keichou. I think Q&A is kind of funny, and I think, like, it would take names. I think it's a really fun deck to play casually, but competitively, I don't think it'll be that good. I think competitively, you will kind of have to know what Keichou and Mikazuki does, because those decks are very aggressive. And, you know, while Mikazuchi again doesn't have that ride line that guarantees you the token set Forge, it still will blow you up. It does a lot of good things early game. It will have easy early game thanks to old cards and new cards, and it will just take names because it's a very aggressive deck that can high roll you. And, you know, that 3 drives crit +1 and being able to stack multiple acts, being able to stack your deck, or, you know, being able to look at top and you to put it on top and bottom multiple times is really strong. It's kind of like Minerva with like a little bit less extra steps, and your CB doesn't matter as much for how many attacks you can do. So yeah, again, I'm really glazing Mikazuchi, but I will probably try and cook something on CFA. Maybe try it out with some friends. Who knows? But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of these reveals. Kind of got more into it than I thought it would. Honestly, I'm honestly not the biggest fan of Touken Ranbu, but I think these cards are still really exciting, and I think it's absolutely hilarious that we got this, despite Flagberg, you know, kind of sitting there doing nothing. But anyways, enough Flagberg slander. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.